Yeah, we don't want to do anything to scare your children.
Welcome to Straight Up with Kevin Carter, a retired veteran and decorated police officer with over 17 years' experience, tackling current events, local, state, and federal, covering today's topics and events with special guests. And now, here's your host, Kevin Carter.
All right, thank you for joining me. Coming to you from high atop Studio 71. Brand new digs, very proud of. Wanted to share with you today some things I've been working on. One of them, importantly, is a young lady by the name of Shoshana Zuboff. She's a professor that has wrote a book about surveillance capitalism. You know, I've talked to you in some previous podcasts about our rights and how we're being surveilled on a constant day-to-day basis, minute by minute. The Constitution of the United States, through the Fourth Amendment, protects the people from unreasonable searches and seizures by the government. The Fourth Amendment, however, is not a guarantee against all searches and seizures, but only those that are deemed unreasonable under the law, meaning law enforcement would have to have a warrant, a probable cause-based warrant to come into your home and search it and things like that. But the key word in this is unreasonable searches and seizures by the government. What does that mean to you? Well, what is the government going to do if they can't get what they want by the letter of the Constitution? They're going to circumvent that by going out and partnering with these companies, the big four, I call them: Microsoft, Apple, Google, Facebook, the big four. Ms. Zuboff has done a tremendous amount of research into this, and I'm just going to tell you, I've got several clips here that I'm going to play. Some of them are longer than others, and then I'm going to comment on them at the end, and I think this is going to really open your eyes, hopefully, as to what is actually in your home. What have you allowed in your home, and what are you going to take out of your home after you hear this? It's very scary. The part that is the most troubling to me is us as adults. We can make our own decisions, but the children, they rely upon us. And when big tech manipulates children to gain information, that is scary. So what I want to do at first is I want to play a clip for you. It's about Pokemon. Maybe you remember the big Pokemon craze when you could walk around and catch these invisible characters, prizes, things of that nature that were floating around in the air in various places. Well, folks, that was no accident. That was all a big manipulation, and I've got a sound clip here that I want to play for you. I want you to hear it. This is Ms. Zuboff. I want you to hear it from her direct as to her study and research into it, and then let's just play it, and then we'll go from there.
Very interesting experiment occurs in the guise of an augmented reality game called Pokemon Go.
What are we not seeing when Pokemon Go is introduced in our country?
It's important to understand that Pokemon Go is an augmented reality game that was developed inside Google for many years, Google being the first pioneer of surveillance capitalism, the inventor of surveillance capitalism. Pokemon Go was invented in Google, incubated there for many years, developed there, led by a man named John Hanke. And John Hanke invented an operation called Keyhole, which was invested in by the CIA and later purchased by Google and called Google Earth.
Google Earth was a CIA startup initially?
Yes, Google Earth was something called Keyhole, and it was a CIA-invested startup. So it's important to understand that Pokemon Go was not some happy little game that just got launched into the world by a toy company or something. When they decided to bring Pokemon Go to the public, they didn't want to bring it as a Google game. They brought it to market as Niantic Labs, which no one had ever heard of. Just a cool startup with this cool game. So now we have this Google augmented reality game, and it turns out that the big game that is on top of the little game that the children are playing is a game that precisely emulates the logic of surveillance capitalism. So in surveillance capitalism, in the original version online, we predict the click-through rate, and we sell the click-through rate to the advertiser, who pays to get clicks on their website, clicking through ultimately to the buy button. That's what they're hoping for. Now, in the real world, business customers paid Niantic Labs, the Pokemon Go company, paid Niantic Labs not for click-through, but for the real-world equivalent of click-through, which is called footfall. To actually get real bodies with their real feet into real business establishments so that their feet would go fall, tap, tap, tap across the store or across the restaurant or across the bar in order to buy something.
So I could order by Niantic Labs a Pokemon in my ice cream parlor, for instance.
All of these establishments, they're buying what are called, here's the term, lure modules. Modules like a gym that lure people to you. Not so that they will come and be happy, but so they will come and spend money in your shop or your restaurant. Starbucks, McDonald's, everybody was making money. Everybody was making money. Niantic Labs was making money, and all these businesses were making money. And the people playing the game had no idea. So they used the rewards and punishment of the game to herd you through the city to the places that were paying for your body. This was the game of Pokemon Go. This was the real game, the shadow game, getting you into a place where we have predicted that you will be, so that our predictions are worth more. If I can guarantee you're actually going to be there, my prediction that you're going to be there is worth a lot more. Economies of action are how I guarantee that. And Pokemon Go was a large-scale experiment, a global-scale experiment in economies of action, using remote control means to automate behavior, to engineer behavior, to fulfill others' commercial ends, while you are having a great time.
So the key word I got out of that was herd, like cattle. So yes, it was a game. It was a game that many children played across the world, adults too. But this is just a snippet of what big tech will go through to get your attention and to make you do what they want you to do. It's this whole mind manipulation thing that we have fallen into, and we would like to think we could avoid this or turn it off or do something to that effect to where we can be exempt from it, but we're instead of that, we're going further down the rabbit hole. Where will it stop? Is the key question of how much is too much, and where will you, as a consumer, say, okay, enough is enough? One of the other problems that I run across in my research into this big issue is this is just the tip of the iceberg. For those of you that have a Nest thermostat in your home, Nest has also come out with a surveillance system. Listen to this.
Some bright engineering-oriented person discovered that the Nest security system has a microphone built into it. That microphone does not figure in any schematic. When you buy the security system and it has the piece of paper that you unfold and the schematic, or you go online to learn about it and there's a schematic, it does not show a microphone. It does not discuss a microphone. Now, why would you have a microphone there? Well, remember, what is our business? Our business depends upon extraction of behavioral surplus, scale, scope, and action. So, what better device to extract behavioral surplus, especially new forms, voices, conversations, what you're watching on television, what music you're listening to, who's coming in and out of your house, whether or not you're shouting at each other over the breakfast table. All of this has tremendous predictive value. Voices are what everybody's after, just like they're after faces. So now this becomes public. There's hey, Google, what's up with this microphone in your security system? What does Google say? Oops, so sorry. Oh, we didn't even know there was a microphone there. Oh, sorry. Why? Somebody put that microphone there, but we never intended to use it. This is their business. To obfuscate, to misdirect, to engineer our ignorance with mechanisms and methods that are undetectable and indecipherable. And if they confront you, deny it. Deny it for as long as possible until they habituate. If there's some element that fails to get habituated, then create an adaptation. All right, we'll make sure all those microphones are, shut off so that they can't be used. And then wait a minute. And when no one is looking, redirect it. So there will be a microphone in something else. There will be a microphone in the, in the home device or in the music player or whatever it might be.
So they put a microphone in this Nest security system, but they didn't bother disclosing the microphone on any of the schematics. And then when they're called out on it, oh, we didn't know that was in there. Oh, well, we never intended to use it. Well, what's it going to be? You didn't know it was there, or you never intended to use it. I don't believe either one of those. So here's where I had come back to this from a previous podcast. I had stated there are court cases now that are making their way through where you have, unbeknownst to some people, the Nest security system had a microphone in it, but we did allow microphones in our home with Alexa, Google Voice, and things like that, because now we have cases that are making their way through the court system because these devices are recording all the time. And when husband and wife get into this big argument and, somebody shouts, "I'm going to kill you," and then somebody ends up dead, and all of a sudden there's no witnesses, there's no evidence to link the spouse to the murder or anything like that, what do they have to fall back on? This voice that's being recorded all the time. You're under surveillance 24/7. And guess what? You let it in there. the scary part about it is not only did you let it in there, but listen to this.
There's two legal scholars, and they're at the University of London, and they analyze the privacy policy, how we give our consent to these devices, right? So they analyze these documents for one Nest thermostat. What happens is the thermostat collects data, it sends those data to third parties, and those third parties send data to third parties ad infinitum, an infinite regress, where your data is going goodness knows where. And no company takes responsibility for what the third parties that it's sending your data to may do with your data. Nest will say, if you don't want us to take your data and you don't want us to send it on to third parties, that's okay. But be aware that without your data, we will stop supporting the functionality of your thermostat. We will stop upgrading the software. Be aware that the smoke detector may no longer work. Be aware that the pipes in your home may freeze. So now the functionality of the device is held hostage to your agreeing to the privacy contract. And they say, by the way, even if you agree and we maintain the functionality, we're sending it to these other third parties and they're going to use it the way they choose, and we take no responsibility for what they do with it.
So either you're in or you're out. There's no two ways about it. You either take the abuse or else. They're not giving anybody an option. Let me put this in context for you. Your credit report, okay? And I know what you're thinking. What the hell does this got to do with it? The FDCPA, Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, all put in place back in the 70s, stated that when the credit reporting agencies collect data on you, okay, and they report it and put it in aggregate, and then the car dealerships or the Chase banks or the Bank of America, whoever goes to that data and looks at it, you as a consumer have a right to look at that information and make sure what they are reporting about you is accurate. If it is not, then they have to provide you a means to dispute this information. It has to be that way, because otherwise they could just report whatever the hell they wanted to about you, and you may not ever get anything. I know, me personally, I have had erroneous stuff put on my credit. I know I've talked about it on a podcast before. And so this is really no different, because of the fact that here we go with this whole either take it or else. Well, no, that's not how this works. And I will tell you, I personally don't have any of these devices in my home for that simple reason. I take it or else. Okay, else. I don't want to take it. I don't. And everybody said, well, what do you got to hide? I don't have nothing to hide. It's my house. It's my privacy. I don't need somebody monitoring my every move. Not that I'm doing anything nefarious or illegal or anything like that, but at what point do we stop? I think that's the big question of where will this stop? And I think we're going to find out the answer to that question the hard way. And by the time it gets to that point, we may not be able to go back. And so people are going to say, well, are you advocating for the government to step in? I don't truly know what the answer to the problem is. I will tell you that Great Britain has stepped in and made all kinds of things where the data collection and stuff like that is actually God, I just had a loss for words. Terrible thing to do on a podcast. But anyway, Great Britain has stepped up and said, okay, you know, they monitor this stuff, and you have to disclose what information you have, and if you don't do that, then you can be fined, and so on and so forth. So, is that the answer here? I don't know. I've said before, anything the government gets involved in here, they've screwed it up. The credit reporting thing has worked very well. It has been, the big two, Equifax, TransUnion, they've got it streamlined now. If you've got something on there, you can actually get it taken off, and so on and so forth. So, maybe they can fix this. I don't know. But what I will tell you is it only gets worse. Listen to this for just a second.
This began with Android. Once Google acquired the ability to make the Android phone, there were a lot of people in Google who said, oh, this is fantastic. Now we have a phone like Apple, and we can sell a phone, and we can make a great margin on that phone. And that margin is going to fund our profits, and this is going to make us really rich. But the wiser heads in Google prevailed. The people who already understood surveillance capitalism prevailed. And they said just the opposite. We want the phone and everything associated with the phone to be as cheap as possible. In fact, if we can get the price to zero, that's even better. We want everybody to have a phone, because the more they have the phone and the more they spend time on the phone, the more data we get from them. The more behavioral surplus streams into our supply chains. So if we can give it away, we're going to give it away.
Google's free mobile operating system, Android, means Google holds the key to almost 90% of the world's smartphones.
90% of the world's smartphones. I'm guilty. I have an Android phone in my pocket. No such thing as a free lunch. My daddy always told me, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And guess what? This is a testimony to that. They are willing, the powers that be that call the shots are willing to give these phones away, because that gives them access to more people. More people means more data. More data means more product to sell. And who would have ever thought that our personal data, our conversations with our wives, our conversations with our children, our pictures on Facebook would be so important and be so valuable. It'd be so valuable to so many people. It's just scary to think that, like I said, where will this stop? Well, listen to this.
Well, surveillance capitalism broke through in Silicon Valley 2002, 3, and 4. It changed the bar for investment. Now you had Google making money on the basis of what I call the surveillance dividend. Now, what venture capitalist wants to invest in a firm that's, just making an app, when it can invest in a firm that's making an app plus the surveillance dividend? So what happened right away was that the investment started flowing to the people who were making more money, and that more came from the surveillance dividend. And now that is the structure that is flowing across the whole economy. Why bother to put all that effort into the engineers and the factories and the science to make a car that runs without carbon, when all we need to do is sell the data from the darn vehicles, and we've got the surveillance dividend, and all those investors are going to come to us and give us the kind of market capitalization that the leading surveillance capitalists have. That's our new lease in life. That's our path forward in the 20th century. We even now see it coming full circle back to the birthplace of mass production in the Ford Motor Company, where the CEO of Ford Motor now says, we want market capitalization like Facebook and Google. How do we get it? Well, instead of figuring out how to make a car that runs carbon-free, What we're going to do is repurpose our automobiles as surveillance vehicles, and we're going to stream data from the 100,000 people who are driving around in Ford cars. We're going to combine that with the data we have from Ford Credit, where he says, we already know everything about you. And these data sets are going to put us on a par with the likes of the great surveillance capitalists, and who wouldn't want to invest in Ford Motor under those circumstances?
So think about that for just a second. Ford Motor wants in. Who is next? So the beauty of Studio 71 is I have the luxury being up here. I can look out over the square and see all the vehicles downtown. And many of them I see two large plastic pucks on the roof. And I know one of those, my truck sitting down there, is satellite radio. The other one is for internet, which all of your new cars now, you can buy internet subscription for your vehicle. As you drive down the road, you got to have internet. You got to have internet everywhere you go now, according to the big techs, the big four. They want you to have internet everywhere. Not for convenience. They want it for them. They don't care. They care about you only because you're producing product for them that they're selling. They're offering you a convenience. But remember what I said, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Listen to this.
There are some things that have broken through into the public view that we do know about. So let's talk about Facebook's massive scale contagion experiments. And this is where Facebook experimented with subliminal cues planted in its Facebook pages that would actually influence offline, real-world behavior and emotions to see if they could make people feel happier or sadder using subliminal cues with language manipulation and word manipulation and so on. Well, when the experimenters wrote up this work in the very prestigious scholarly journals that published the results of these experiments, they emphasized two key findings. Number one, we now know that we can manipulate subliminal cues in the online context to change real-world behavior or real-world emotion. We know that we can be successful at doing this. Number two, we can exercise this power, these methods, while bypassing user awareness.
Several things you needed to take away from that. We know we can do it, and we can bypass user awareness. And we can manipulate these people to do what it is we want them to do. This is just Facebook. Think about that for just a second. They are admitting what they are doing is manipulating you with what you're giving them supposedly for free. It's all a big game, and it's all big money. But you're not getting any of that money. They're making that money on the back end. Remember what I said about Google? $150 billion a year company. That's one of the big four. I don't even know. I know Facebook took a big financial hit supposedly this last week in the stock market, and I don't even know. I can't even quote you the number at this point, but I can promise you it hasn't hurt them to the point that they're going to shut down or anything like that. When you look and you see these companies, locations, actual offices, they take up entire cities, and they're a city within a city. It's just amazing. And where does all that money come from? From you, because they're exploiting you and me, not just you. It's me too. They're exploiting us. Let me rephrase that. They're exploiting us every second of every day. We're being monitored, and who's taking this? So if you look at from the invent of Facebook, that was a program the CIA or the NSA was trying to start, and they all of a sudden just miraculously one day said, no, we're not going to do it anymore, and the next day Facebook started. Coincidence? I don't believe in coincidences. I'm just going to tell you that right now. So is Facebook a big monitoring system for our government? We already know they have facial recognition software built into the platform. So we already know they have GPS capability in all of these pictures. We already know that if you go to deepfake, which is actually an amazing technology that's out there, just go to YouTube and look at deepfake. It will blow your mind. What they can do with digital technology. They can take 100 of your pictures off of Facebook and capture them from so many different angles with a computer program, and then superimpose your face on somebody else. So whenever they have you in a nefarious situation where you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing, or you may be standing up in front of a crowd saying something you're not supposed to be saying, keep in mind, it may not be the person that's actually doing it. It may be a deep fake. During the research of that, I even learned, this is crazy, and then I stumbled across this by accident. There is actually a website out there that is called Deep Fake Pornography. So they have gotten, in the porno industry, believe it or not, they drive a lot of what happens in the digital industry. So back in the day, for those of you that are old enough to know this, back when Beta and VHS was battling for supremacy in the video world, VHS won because the porno industry chose VHS, okay? And then when DVD came around, that only became successful because the porno industry switched from VHS to DVD. Those are that you can look that up. I assure you will find exactly what I'm talking about. The porno industry is a multi-billion-dollar a year industry. Sad to say. They don't get none of my money, but there's enough people out there to support it worldwide that it is a part of society, unfortunately. So if you look at the deep fake, it's crazy. And where are they getting all this information from? Facebook, social media, Instagram, everywhere. It's all being given to them for free. The first thing everybody does is throw their picture out there on social media, and go for, it's just crazy what we have allowed ourselves to walk into here. And the last clip I want to share with you here is about how all of our data, and I really want you to listen to this one closely, about how our data was used against us in a negative way. This is where we talk about how our democracy has potentially been lost to the internet.
And what is that? That came from yet another whistleblower. His name was Chris Wiley. And he told us about Cambridge Analytica.
Chris Wiley, a former employee of the British company Cambridge Analytica, sounded the alarm about the methods used by this political marketing business. Cambridge Analytica used the Facebook data of more than 80 million Americans to analyze the best ways of manipulating American voters.
One of the things that Chris Wiley said when he broke this story with The Guardian back in 2018 is he said, we knew so much about so many individuals that we could understand their inner demons. And we could figure out how to target those demons, how to target their fear, how to target their anger, how to target their paranoia. And with those targets, we could trigger those emotions And by triggering those emotions, we could then manipulate them into clicking on a website, joining a group, telling them what kind of things to read, telling them what kind of people to hang out with, even telling them who to vote for. Now, that is absolutely no different than what Facebook aimed to do with these young people, innocent young people in Australia and New Zealand, to target their inner demons. The same mechanisms, the same methods, only pivoted just a few degrees from commercial outcomes to political outcomes. Cambridge Analytica was nothing but a parasite on a huge host. And that host is surveillance capitalism. Well, in June 2019, which happened to be just a couple of months after that grand announcement that the future is private, there was a very interesting court case that was being tried before a California judge. And this court case was a class action suit brought by individuals who were demanding from Facebook. They wanted to have the data that Facebook had made available to Cambridge Analytica to see if they had been targeted and manipulated by Cambridge Analytica. And this had come to a head in a California court. The Facebook counsel who argued this case stood in front of the judge and said that any Facebook user gets on the platform and typically is sharing information with 100 or more people in their network. Once you've done that, you have no expectation of privacy that would make you legitimately able to claim any kind of privacy right in a suit like this or any other kind of privacy-oriented suit. And so here we have, again, the public operation and the shadow operation. What's happening backstage is a lawyer standing in front of a judge saying, no Facebook user has any legitimate expectation of privacy.
This is
No expectation of privacy. Wow. Not sure I agree with that. I understand that we share things on a social platform. What we don't understand is how our information is being used behind the scenes without our knowledge. And I compare this to the credit report again. When our credit is being used, I have mine. I have a monitoring system that I use that I subscribe to. Anytime somebody looks at my information, I get notified. Anytime somebody wants to pull my credit report, they have the privacy, because I've been a victim of identity theft 3 times. So anytime somebody pulls that report, they have a fraud alert that pops up in front of them that they have to call me and ask me a couple of security questions that only I would know at that time. And if I don't answer them right, they can't go forward. It won't let them see my report. And so I think we need some type of oversight in this arena to protect the citizens, but more importantly, go back to the Pokemon thing. We got to protect these children, because these children, my granddaughter was at my house yesterday. She'll be 3 years old in May. She already has a PiPad, as she calls it, her PiPad, to watch her videos and things like that she enjoys watching. And the children are progressing so much faster, I believe. I mean, at that age, she can count, she knows her shapes. It's just amazing at the intelligence that these children have nowadays. And I know that our electronic devices have a place in our life. But at what point do we take control of our life and our information and tell these people enough is enough and stop? If we don't support Nest, thermostats, and surveillance and all that stuff, then that's not going to work for them. And if we don't do the Android phone, that's going to stop working for them. So at some point, we have to put our foot down. The Amish is a great example of it. They've done it. They have done it. And there are certain organizations or factions, if you will, of the Amish community that actually believe you can have a phone. And there are phones out there that will only make phone calls. They don't receive text messages, none of that. They don't have the internet on them or none of that. I know, what a concept. We are so attuned and accustomed to having everything at our fingertips. Could we ever go back? The Amish have computers that do not go to the internet. They have Excel in them. They have Word in them. They have things that help them run businesses that will help them calculate things faster and do things in a somewhat modern way, but they do not expose themselves to the perils of what we have allowed ourselves to be exposed to. So I want to close this out with it and give you a thought to just think about over the next few days. Think about every time you pick up that phone and you send a text message, you put something on social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever. How many times a day do you give your information out? I know I have been more conscientious about it since I've done this research to do this podcast, and by, certainly by listening and watching Miss Shoshana's message here has been very, very eye-opening. And again, her name is Shoshana Zuboff, and it's spelled Zuboff. Her first name is Shoshana, Shoshana. Very smart lady. Everything that she said is spot on. Like I said, her book is Surveillance Capitalism. Who would have ever known that all of our information was worth so much money?
It's the last thing we want to do. We don't want to scare anybody.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Straight Up with Kevin Carter. For questions or comments, contact us at straightupkevincarter@gmail.com. Until next time.